Take a look at this image. A police van packed front to back with detained protesters in Mumbai. A 27-year-old model sees something in her snaps. Rhiya Ahir runs up, plants herself in front of the van and refuses to move. Her resistance is now viral on social media. That video is now everywhere. Rhiya has become one of the defining faces of India's Gen Z protest moments. Young people have often changed history, from the Arab Spring to India's freedom struggle. Student movements have challenged power and demanded accountability. But does every youth uprising lead to a stronger democracy? Or can revolutions sometimes replace one crisis with another? Exiled Bangladeshi author Taslima Nasreen believes the answer is uncomfortable. Looking at CJP protests in India, she says they remind her of Bangladesh's 2024 student uprising, a movement that began over jobs, ended by toppling a government. What followed, she argues, was not freedom but deeper instability. Taslima's warning now raises a larger question. Have South Asia's recent youth revolutions delivered change or simply traded one set of problems for another? Taslima Nasreen rarely avoids controversy. This time it's not a government she's criticizing, it is the idea that every student movement automatically represents democracy. Reacting to the recent Cockroach Janata Party protests in Delhi, she drew a direct comparison with Bangladesh's July 2024 uprising. She wrote that Bangladesh's movements began with demands over quotas and merits, but eventually became a campaign to overthrow the government. Her point was not nostalgia, it was a warning. She wrote that Bangladesh is now paying the price for what followed, that militant groups have gained ground, and that brutality, communalism, and anarchy are eating into the country she once called home. Taslima says that since that movement, she can no longer trust student gatherings easily. Not every protest, she wrote, stands for democracy. Not every revolution is truly a revolution. Some just clear out an old regime to make room for something much darker. Her remarks have reignited an uncomfortable debate across South Asia. Can street revolutions guarantee better governance, or are they only the beginning of another political struggle? Let's rewind and see what happened in Bangladesh after student uprising led to Sheikh Hasina government's fall in August 2024. The interim government under Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus took charge, promising reform, fair elections, and accountability. 2 years on, the report card is grim. Mob violence has claimed close to 200 lives since the uprising, often with police simply watching. Attacks on Hindu minorities have continued with disturbing regularity, drawing concern even from the United Nations Secretary General. Newspaper officers have been torched, a youth leader was assassinated, triggering further unrest. Bangladesh did hold elections in February 26, but the interim years leading up to it were marked by banned parties, arbitrary detentions, and an economy that never fully stabilized. And this is exactly what Taslima was pointing to. The uprising removed an authoritarian leader. It did not automatically produce a stable, tolerant democracy. What filled the vacuum was, in her words, fear. Let's now shift focus to Nepal, another neighbor, another Gen Z protest that turned violent and overthrew a sitting democratic government. In September last year, the Youth Brigade in Nepal went on rampage driven by anger over corruption and a social media ban. They burned down the parliament, dozens were killed, politicians were dragged out and lynched. The result was a stunning political shift. Balen Shah, a 36-year-old former Kathmandu mayor, better known as a rapper, swept to power in March 2026 with a massive mandate. 100 days in, the picture is mixed at best. Shah's government arrested former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli within a day of taking office, though he was later released without charge. Protests have returned to the streets of Kathmandu, this time over rehabilitation for families displaced during recent eviction drives. A series of self-immolation cases and growing frustration among young people converge into one of the biggest political challenges of his tenure. In April, barely days after he took charge, Balen Shah lost two of his ministers, including the Home Minister. The reason? Corruption, the very crime against which Nepal's youth went up in arms and brought about change. Beyond all this, Balen Shah's government has been accused of high-handedness while implementing its policies. The government has reportedly leaned heavily on ordinances instead of parliamentary process, raising real concerns about checks and balances. One ordinance even lets the Constitutional Council make judicial appointments by simple majority, worrying legal experts. Here's the part that connects it all back to Jantar Mantar. The Cockroach Janata Party protests began over a very specific, very legitimate grievance. Alleged neat paper leaks and marking irregularities that affected millions of students preparing for years. That's a real problem worth protesting. But Taslima's point isn't about whether the grievance is valid. It's about what happens when protest energy gets pulled towards demanding a government's fall rather than fixing the actual problem. Bangladeshi students started with an exam quota slogan too. Nepal's Gen Z started with anger over social media ban. Both spiraled into full-blown government collapses. Neither country has landed on stable ground yet. None of this means that every protest turns violent or every movement is doomed. But Taslima Nasreen is making a narrower, sharper point. Momentum and moral outrage are not the same as a plan for what comes next. Removing a government is easy compared to building one that actually works. So here's what's worth asking honestly. If a youth movement succeeds in toppling a government, who fills that vacuum? And are they actually more accountable than what came before? Bangladesh's answers 2 years on involves mob violence and minority persecution. Nepal's answer 100 days on involves reform ordinances that sidestep the very institutions meant to check power. Is India's CJP protest fundamentally different because it's staying within constitutional bounds? Or could the same pattern of protest turned political vacuum repeat itself here too? Taslima Nasreen is not telling people to stop protesting. She's asking a much harder question. What happens after the government falls, and who's actually prepared to answer for it? This is Times Access, where global stories meet India's perspective. Click on the bell icon to subscribe because the next big global shift will have India at its center.